Hello, my name is Paul Arnold. I serve as one of the chaplains here at Glacier Hills. And I am working on a new series to present to you on Glacier Hills TV called Stories of Faith. And I'll be teaching on the life of David from the Bible. It's a great story. It has a lot of wonderful characters and lessons for us still today. And so I'll be recording 8 of these lessons to share with you in the future. But I'm still preparing, and it's been a busy week. But I wanted to start off this week giving you several videos. First video I want to share with you today is a summary of David's life put together by ABC News. I hope you enjoy it.
The landscape of this region seems unchanged from how it probably looked thousands of years ago. In fact, it's a landscape that's baked into the stories of the Bible, and so many of them involve stones. There are rocks all over the place. One of the most famous stories is about a stone and a slingshot, how the boy David faced off against the great hulking giant Goliath, the same David who the Bible says grew up to be the king who built this city of Jerusalem.
David is one of the most fascinating characters in world literature. He looks almost perfect.
David is the Bible's first real hero.
David was a very talented man who could sing, who could fight, who could lead.
He's a poet, he's a musician. We're told that he's absolutely gorgeous to look at, and God loves him.
And he's been portrayed by some of Hollywood's biggest stars in movies such as David and Bathsheba and King David.
Respect what is ours, and we shall keep faith with you.
David was ancient Israel's greatest king. He is also one of Islam's earliest prophets, and Christians believe Jesus is directly descended from David. And yet, this hero was a deeply flawed man.
David was kind of a bastard. There are some texts in which we can see so clearly that David is a problematic character.
He's running a protection racket. He's got bodies piling up all over the place. He's strategically marrying women in different parts of the land of Israel to consolidate his run for the throne.
But that wasn't how it all started. The first time we meet David in the Bible, he's an innocent young shepherd boy with that stone in his hand. He was the only one from his tribe brave enough to face Goliath, the most fearsome fighter from a rival tribe, the Philistines, whom the Bible describes as over 10 feet tall.
We don't have any proof that David actually ever fought Goliath, and yet it does, to a certain extent, make sense. We know that the Philistines are there. We know that the Israelites are there. We know that they're banging heads against each other.
And it is written that David felled the giant with only a slingshot. And we all think of it as the teeny little pea that brought down a giant.
Well, the slingshot at that time was, in fact, rather like the sort of sniper rifle of today. When these could be huge stones, they could be propelled at incredible velocity, and they could go straight through armor, like a handheld bazooka that can actually stop a tank.
And today, from Tiananmen Square to Tahrir Square, the story is invoked when the most unlikely heroes stand up to forces that seem certain to crush them.
Prophet David does win against the Goliath. It's not only about him, but the underprivileged, the underdog, the weak is rendered victorious ultimately.
According to the Bible, David's triumphs continued. He recaptured the Ark of the Covenant from the Philistines. It had held the 10 Commandments. And he brought together the warring tribes of the 12 sons of Jacob to form a nation. Even today, the flag of modern Israel, founded 3,000 years after his reign, bears the symbol known as the Star of David. And Jerusalem is the place he chose as his capital, making it not only a holy city, but a political one too. There's evidence that King David really lived. Just 20 years ago in northern Israel, archaeologists discovered a kind of ancient royal archive called a stela.
And it mentions a house or dynasty of David, and the reading is clear. It also mentions an entity, a state-like entity called Israel.
It may seem like a small thing, but it's an important discovery. It makes David the earliest biblical figure whom we can confirm actually existed. But the stela doesn't confirm some of the more scandalous details of David's life.
David, here was a guy who was the king. Oh, he had it all. He could have anything he wanted. He had the absolute loyalty of his soldiers. He was on top. And then he goes out, breaks a moral covenant with God.
David was on his roof in Jerusalem, and he saw this beautiful woman bathing on the roof, and he said, "Who's that woman?" They said, "That's Bathsheba, wife of Uriah the Hittite."
His eye is the beginning of the problem. His eye that makes him forget everything he's heard in terms of God's commandments.
He says, she's hot, and I want that. Bring me that. And his henchmen go, bring him Bathsheba.
And so that eye leads him to the act of adultery. And when the woman says, "I am pregnant," he goes deeper and deeper into the darkness.
And here's where the Bible becomes a little like Pulp Fiction. King David tried to cover his tracks by getting Bathsheba's husband Uriah drunk,
in the hopes that Uriah will immediately bed his wife and be none the wiser. All does not go according to plan. David has Uriah killed, and then brings Bathsheba to live with him.
The intimate details of David's personal life are unlike anything else found in the Bible.
And that suggests that some of the text is extremely ancient and may be based on an actual memoir of his court, because the portrayal of David is so real.
It's a familiar story, the sometimes reckless sense of entitlement that comes with power. It's known today as the Bathsheba syndrome.
A lot of people think of that as a story about sexual lust, and it kind of is, but it's a story about power and how power corrupts. And wow, that's all over our world today.
But this Bible story is also a cautionary tale.
David's sins impact his children and his grandchildren all the way down.
David's sons have grown up learning how to deal with women from their father. 2 of David's sons grow up to be rapists.
And indeed, David did suffer the consequences of his actions.
The child he's conceived with Bathsheba dies. And he mourns and mourns and mourns. And again, you get the old, attractive, lovely David again.
We have to look at David in both ways. He rose to the heights of power, and he sunk to the depths of depravity, and yet he comes back. He repents.
And the Bible tells us that God never stops loving David. He forgives the sins of this imperfect hero. David was given a second chance, a second child with Bathsheba, a son named Solomon.
That was a quick summary of David's life, a little sensationalized. Next week I'll talk to you about David and his character, which was evident as a boy. My wife and I like to watch TV, and over the years we've enjoyed different cable TV shows. I guess that's what they still call it today. Not on the main channels, but one show in particular we really enjoyed watching was called Fixer Upper with Chip and Joanna Gaines. It's a story of a couple and their children and their business of remodeling homes and decorating those homes and the process they go through. And we really enjoyed just the good entertainment without swearing or violence and just creative. And our family loves it, and it's been very popular across the country. This next video is Joanna Gaines sharing some of her story of faith.
I remember as a little girl, my mom was Korean and my father was Caucasian, and I never knew there was anything different about myself until I started going to school. And I'll never forget an experience I had with the school lunchroom. You know, I remember standing there and seeing the sea of people. Felt like all eyes were on me, and I was thinking, you know, who's going to be my friend? Who am I going to sit with? I started walking through that lunchroom, and then I remember darting straight out, and I found a bathroom, locked myself in a stall. But in those moments is when I really believe that that's where the lie was sown, that who I wasn't good enough. You know, as we all do, I grew up and I grew out of the insecurities, had great friends, great childhood. And I remember in those times, I heard him specifically say, you know, Joanna, I have a calling for you. You're gonna have a platform one day. And I remember thinking, what does that even mean? And I remember hearing God say, Joanna, there's gonna come a time where I'm gonna say for you to go, and I'm gonna need you to step out and go. After graduating college, you know, a couple years later, I end up meeting this handsome, rugged cowboy who was hilarious, Chip Gaines. And we got married, and he knew that I had this whole thing of businesses that I wanted to start, but he also knew I was never gonna just take the risk and start them. I just dreamed about them. And he really encouraged me to step out and make one of those dreams happen. And we opened Magnolia Market together, and I loved it, you know, but at that time I was also pregnant with my second child, and I really felt like God was saying, hey, I want you home. I want you raising these babies at home at this age. And I remember the last day, you know, we're closing the shop down, and I'm crying because, again, I feel like it's the end of a dream. And I hear God say very clearly, he said, Joanna, if you trust me with your dreams, I'm gonna take Magnolia further than you could have ever dreamed. So just trust me. And I remember hearing that and feeling completely peaceful about it. And I walked away. Well, a couple years ago, we get this call from a production company, and they ask us to film a quick video of our family and what we do as a business, and that turned into the show that we have now. You know, Chip and I laugh. We look back and we just go, how did this all happen? And I remember last year in January, Chip and I took a trip to Arizona, and we were driving around, and we found this really beautiful garden, and Chip said, I'm gonna drop you off here. I'm gonna give you about an hour, and I want you to kind of reflect on the year before, and then just let God speak to you about what this next year is gonna look like. And he dropped me off, and I'm sitting under this tree, and I felt like God said, Joe, it's time. And I was like, time for what? And he said, it's time to reopen your store. And I said, I don't think I can do that. And just cool and calm, no, it's time. May of last year, we reopened the shop on Bosque, the little shop on Bosque. And now I look back and I go, God, your promise that you spoke years ago, I'm now seeing. I trusted you with my dream, and you've taken it far beyond what I could have ever dreamed or imagined. You know, I can look back now in the pattern of my life and really believe God has a purpose for me, but he also has a purpose for you. And on the other side of that is the enemy, where he knows where to hit. He knows to hit below the belt. He's gonna have that fear be, if you fail, and what if you fail in front of all these people? What if you fail and don't find someone in that lunchroom? What if your business fails? Whether it's you're staying home with your children and you're raising beautiful babies, or you're the CEO of a multi-million-dollar company, let God speak into your life. Let his father heart come and say, this is what I have for you. And I think that's the key, not believing the lies, fixing our eyes on Jesus and walking in that truth.
Joanna Gaines and her husband Chip are now starting their own network, if you can believe it, called Magnolia Network, and they've done quite well for themselves. And the next video I want to show you is another man who has done quite well for himself. His name is Clayton Kershaw. He grew up in Texas. He was a good baseball player, and he was drafted by the Los Angeles Dodgers, and I got to see him play for the Single-A Midland Loons, or Great Lakes Loons, up in Midland, Michigan, in the ballpark there. I grew up in Midland, Michigan, and boy, if there was a baseball team when I was growing up, I would have been there at every game. So about 12 years ago, I went there with my son and watched Clayton pitch as a rookie. And even then, he had an incredible fastball that everybody oohed and ahed over. We hoped he would turn out to be a great player, and he has. He's won Cy Young Awards for the best pitcher. He's won the World Series. And yet, here's his story of faith.
You know, I think the first memories I have are just, playing catch in the front yard, playing with neighbors, playing with friends, playing with my dad, just anything. I remember those times, not so much games or not so much, certain memories in certain games. I can't even really remember that far back. I remember I was in Zebulon, North Carolina in AA, and got the call into the manager's office like everybody else, and they said, hey, don't call anybody because the guy that's getting sent down or released doesn't know yet, and so we don't want him to find out through somebody else. And I was like, okay, I won't. And I immediately got on the phone. I was like, all right, I got to tell everybody,
I was back at home. I guess I was home for summer, and I was with all of Clayton and I's high school friends. I was in one big room with all of them, and the first thing Clayton says is, you can't tell anyone. So I'm dying. He tells me that he is going to be playing for the Los Angeles Dodgers in 2 days, and I needed to find a way out there, and he was going to keep me posted on who all I could tell.
I show up in LA and there's 20 people there. My mom was there, some of my friends were there, her family was there, and it's just like, that's pretty cool, that people cared that much to get out there that fast.
It was surreal. It was incredible that I saw Clayton play as a high schooler, coming up, and it's just been incredible to see this journey.
I'm not even go through the day how nervous I was. I couldn't even eat or breathe, and Joe Torre's our manager. It's just, it was a pretty unforgettable day.
The thing is, Clayton and I never intended to start a charity or to start a foundation at our age. I think it was always a dream, but for us, Kershaw's Challenge began with a very basic need that needed to be met.
By the time that we had been dating, she had been thinking about it, and she had told me that it's something that's really been put on her heart.
The Lord kept knocking on this door, and he kept just putting a discomfort in my heart until I was ready to answer the call.
And she's been so involved in my passion, which is baseball, and I knew that if we were ever to get married, that's her passion. And so literally 3 weeks after we get married, I'm on a plane over there.
The first time you hold a Zambian orphan, your entire life will be changed because it becomes so personal and so real, and that overwhelming blanket of poverty is in this one child. And you realize that if you can only make a difference in this one person's life, that maybe is what the Lord has called you to for your entire existence.
I guess I should start with Hope. She's HIV positive, double orphan. She was in bad shape, and Ellen took her immediately to the nurse and kind of got her looked at. And from that trip on, we started sponsoring Hope.
Sponsorship can only take them so far, but until these kids have a place to go home to at night, they need to feel the love of a family and the love of parents, and to feel like they're a part of something. And so for us, it was kind of just an easy decision to make. Clayton decided he was going to strike out to serve, and so for every strikeout, he wanted to donate money towards building Hope's home. And for us, it was actually the coolest season that he started that. People can call it coincidence, but we have no doubt in our mind that the Lord was up to something incredible, that Clayton went to lead the National League in strikeouts that first season that he was striking out to serve. Orphanage is complete, and just to even say that is surreal, because a year ago when Clayton and I went and we talked to an architect and we went over blueprints, and a vision of ours back then had become a little bit more tangible in the sense that we were standing on the land, but to go back is going to be absolutely incredible to see probably 12 kids at that point calling this place their home and calling each other brothers and sisters and having parents that are living there.
These people, if they have their basic needs met, food and shelter, that they are the happiest culture in the world because they have Jesus. People get the wrong idea about Christianity sometimes, and a lot of people have preconceived notions about what that means and what that looks like and how your life is supposed to be shaped. And I think more than anything, if I were to just come up to somebody and that had no idea about the faith, and I'd say, it's simple. Jesus saved us, and Jesus is the only answer. This man, God, took us and saved us, and that's it. and He's our Savior, and that's everything is for Him. Everything good in this world comes from Him, and you can believe that or you don't, but that's it.
The last video I'll show today is an interesting video. It's a walk through Jerusalem. There's no narration, there's no talking, but it's like a man walking through Jerusalem. And over in Jerusalem there is a tourist attraction called City of David, where they're trying to rebuild and show off different artifacts going back to David and that time in the history of Jerusalem. So it's a nice sort of quiet walk through. I hope to get there someday as one of the things on my bucket list. Maybe if you've been to Jerusalem, next time you see me in the hallways, please stop me and tell me about your experience. So I hope you watch this and realize that even today, Jerusalem is a place of faith. That's it for today's show. Next week, I'll be back with the first lesson on character from David's life and how it applies to us today. And I'll try to throw in another short video that you might be interested in as well. Stay safe, stay well. God bless you.